Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Mike Ribble, and I'm the author of the ISTE books Digital Citizenship in Schools and Raising a Digital Child. I've been asked by Dr. Jason Oler, who's running this Digital Citizenship MOOC, to come and talk a little bit about the 9 elements which I've put together in both of my books and several of the articles that I've written. I am currently a District Director of Technology, so I am very aware of what is happening in the classroom each day when it comes to technology and its use by students and by teachers. Technology growth has been exponential everywhere. I'm sure in your districts as well there has been an immense growth and expansion of technology and its use in your curriculum and within your classroom. Today I want to talk about the background of digital citizenship and how I have broken it up into different parts so that it makes it easier for you as a classroom teacher to use it in your individual classroom and with your students. Many people have asked me, how did I get started with digital citizenship? I began working with digital citizenship when I returned to Kansas State University to work with a professor by the name of Dr. Gerald Bailey. Dr. Bailey was working with educational administration students and talking about the topic of technology within educational administration and education as a whole. In one of my first graduate classes that Dr. Bailey was teaching, he began his session with an idea about digital citizenship or digital citizens. And after the course, I went to Dr. Bailey and asked him, what were you talking about under the topic of digital citizenship? He began giving me an idea of an appropriateness, a responsibility that students, teachers, and administrators had towards using technology within education and how it helps to move us forward as an educational institution. So since that time, I've been doing research and gathering information about digital citizenship and how it could be used within our schools. That's where I came up with my 9 elements, and later in this presentation I'll talk specifically about the 9 elements and how I see their importance within education, but also at the community at large. The use of technology, as I mentioned, has grown exponentially just over the last few years. I'm sure many of your students, even those that have elementary age students, have quite a bit of technology already available to them. In this slide, lots of kids have smartphones, tablets, any devices that they already are using, which is quite a big growth from where we've come from. When I was 6, I only had a phone like this. Yes, it was just a toy phone, but it was the only technology that I really had at that time. So we are providing our students and our children with technology earlier and earlier for them to be able to utilize. So it is inherent to us and to the parents of our students to begin to teach about responsible use of technology and where it needs to fit with. We often talk about what are some of the main topics within digital citizenship. And I know that you're now in week 6, so I'm sure you've talked a lot about many of these ideas of digital citizenship. But this is a wordle that we put together when we were working with administrators about a year ago. Dr. Oler and myself were in charge of a team that basically worked with administrators to begin to focus on what are some of the important aspects of technology and some of the issues that come along with it. So you'll see a lot of the terms that I'm sure that you use on a regular basis. Appropriateness, footprint, plagiarism. Some that you may not see is often safety, ownership, reputation. Often digital or cyberbullying is one of the large ones that gets a lot of press today. So all of these terms are all part of this idea of digital citizenship. And when I started this journey of working with this topic, I found that there was so many ideas, so many concepts that were out there that it was often overwhelming for teachers in the classroom to really grasp what am I supposed to do with all of these topics and where am I supposed to go with them once I have them, and what am I going to do with our students. My hope is that I will begin to give you a foundation of where to begin setting these ideas within your classroom and helping your students to really become these digital citizens that we hope for them in this next century. I know that many of these courses that you've taken within this MOOC are based on the ISTE standards. And one that I want to focus on is the ISTE standard for teachers, or Standards T, as it's been renamed. And we talk about these different pieces in facilitating and inspire student leadership and creativity. And creativity is one of those big areas that technology provides so many tools for us to help our students move forward. Design and develop digital age learning experience and assessments. And many are working towards that, but it's still a growth process. Model digital age work and learning. We're doing that in many, many levels. Number 4, promote and model digital citizenship and responsibility is what we're going to be focused on. And then finally, engage in professional growth and leadership. And as you take this course, I'm sure that's one of your major ideas, is that you will grow and hopefully become leaders as digital citizenship knowledge base for the rest of your school. So let's focus a little bit on the ISTE Standard T, focused on Standard 4, talking about promote and model digital citizenship and responsibility. As you can see, a lot of the terms that are in there are things that had been used before, and we talked quite a bit about them. But how do we do them? Things like advocate and teach safe and legal and ethical use of digital information. We have to have a strong basis in these ideas before we can start modeling and teaching them to our students, including respect for copyright, intellectual property, appropriate documentation. Diversity is always going to be a large concern of both technology and non-technology aspects within education. But technology, there is definitely a issue with those that have access and those that might not. And we'll talk more about that more deeply as we go in through the 9 elements. Promote and model digital etiquette and responsible social interactions. Social media has grown so much within the use and the lexicon of technology today, and we can't get away from talking about those social interactions. And also model cultural understanding and global awareness. And this is one of the major tools of technology to be able to give us the ability to communicate and interact and pull down information from so many different aspects, not just within our own country, but those around the world. There's a couple of books that I would suggest that you might want to take a look at. For those that are teaching, especially the upper grades, you might want to share information from Matt Ivester's book called LOL OMG. The acronyms, of course, are laugh out loud and then oh my gosh. And he goes into many examples of where students and even adults thought that that things they were doing were either funny or cute or had some other purpose, and then come to find out on the backside they had a very negative response. And those are the things that we tend to forget about. We always kind of live in the now with technology, and we need to spend a little bit of time thinking of what could the future hold with what we're doing. So some of the questions that he asks are, why are you online? Why do you have a Twitter or Facebook account? And I think especially for our younger students, I think that's a great question to ask. What was the reason that you decided that you wanted a Facebook account or a Twitter account? And then, is now the right time? And I know that will vary from student to student, so we can't just have one blanket answer saying that at X age is the best time to have a social media account. And then, where's your line between public and private? And there are many adults that even struggle with this concept of where is that line. And we know that many social media organizations will change their policies over time, and you have to keep up with what is public and what is available to other people. But what I really like from Matt Ivester's book is sort of these 5 ideas of why do we have cyberbullying. And I know that that's one of those things that is very, very important to schools on a regular basis. And I think he really focused in on many of the real issues that focus around cyberbullying. Things like abstraction. It doesn't really feel real. I'm just typing things in. I'm not really sending it to anybody. I'm just posting it out there for the world to see. And maybe I'm not even thinking about the world. I'm just thinking, I'm just posting my thoughts, and that's all I'm doing. Second is that there's no visible impact. It's invisible to me that when I post it, I don't get any direct feedback from people. I don't get a visual cue, a facial reaction. I don't get that from my people that I'm sending this to. So that's hard for me to understand. So I'm just posting without any real feedback. Third is shaming. There's little recourse in the virtual world. Some does happen. When people post things, there will be often reactions and information that's sent back, but not everybody really reads and understands and really holds that information internally, so it's not as impactful for them. And then anonymity. You don't have to come face to face as a bully anymore. You can sit at home, you can be on your smartphone, you can be on your tablet, and you never have to actually interact in a physical space with somebody to actually bully them. And then last, it's the norm. We assume that everybody is doing it, so why would I be selected out? Why would I be identified as somebody that is a bully? A lot of research that has come out often says that cyberbullying is a small amount of the issues that are in our schools. But what happens is that when an event happens, it tends to encompass so many people that it isn't just a one-on-one situation. It's often tens and probably even hundreds of people get involved in these. Another book that really isn't focused on digital technology but was talking about the growth of technology, especially in television and telephone as it was growing, is Postman's book on the disappearance of childhood. And as Postman begins to point out, we're providing things to students and to children that are very much more sophisticated than what we've given in the past. Back to my original or second slide that showed my little toy phone, children today now have the same kinds of tools as their adult counterparts. And so there is this idea of that they are being sort of pulled into this adult world by the tools and by the information that they're being able to access and be able to pull in. So he's talking about that we are starting to erode away at this idea of childhood, and that we are asking them to become adult-like much, much more rapidly. And I like this concept of this sort of Frankenstein syndrome, because it's this concept that we have these technologies that all of a sudden they were for one thing and then they become something else. We wanted to do good, we wanted to try to bring about positive change, but it brings these other baggage along with it, and those are the things that we have to deal with, and those are the things that makes it hard for us. So what is digital citizenship? It definitely is a topic that everyone agrees that we need to be moving towards, but we don't always have a real specific idea of what is a digital citizen. So I'm hoping as you work through this course and others and gather more information that you will have a better understanding of digital citizenship. But I'm especially hopeful that once you finish this presentation, that you will feel that you've got at least a good foundation to begin talking with others and interacting with others about what is digital citizenship. So I'm sure that Dr. Oler, through the beginning of this course, has shared information from his book, Digital Community, Digital Citizen. And his definition from his website says, what does it mean to be a citizen in a digital age? And it seems a little simplistic when you first hear it, but that's what it's about. It's about living, interacting, and helping others within this digital life that we're going through, this new citizenry of how do we interact without being in any kind of physical space with each other. And that's, I think, some of the hardest things that we tend to struggle with. Cable in the Classroom also talks quite a bit about digital citizenship, and they talk about this holistic and very positive approach of helping children to be safe, to be secure, to understand their rights and responsibilities, and that they have ethical implications of the actions that they're going to do with technology. So these pieces are all parts of the puzzle. What does it mean to be a citizen? So if you look in my books, either in Raising a Digital Child or Digital Citizenship in Schools, I define it as the norms of appropriate, responsible behavior with regard to technology use. And I've left it a little bit vague in the idea that different communities and different countries and societies have a little bit different ideas of what they consider their norms. What is the norms of that culture, of that organization, of that group? So there is some flexibility in there, but it still talks about responsibilities and appropriateness, and where are we going to set those boundaries? That we have to set something. We have to set a concept, an idea of where do we want them to be, and where do we want our students and our children to act and involve and interact with each other as they go along this path of having technology and moving in this direction. To help with my elements, I broke them down into 3 main topic areas, and we'll talk about each of them and why we put them into certain headings. But I came up with this idea of REP. And rep, for those that have done many physical activities, rep is often associated with repetition. And that's what digital citizenship to me is. It is repetition. It's very much like any other skill that we teach within our classrooms. We don't just teach about sentence structure or multiplication or any of the aspects that are important one time. We tend to come back time and time again to really reinforce what are the main ideas that we want our students to learn. So to begin with, R is respect. And each one of these you'll see has two parts that I've put together. Respect not only for yourself, and there are many things, especially with the new technologies, things like selfies and sexting and those kinds of things that are a real respect for the individual, for your own self and for your own individualness. But there's also respect for others. And when we do things, we need to be thinking about the other people that are on the other side of the screen. And I think too often we forget about that other part. We forget about that piece that there is somebody else that is out there. There are many, many other people that are out there, but we need to be respectful to them. Second is educate. And I think for teachers, we often think of education of just within the classroom, within our buildings, within our own rooms. But education goes on everywhere. Education happens in our homes. It happens in the communities. It happens in sporting events. It happens in many, many places. So educate to me means learning about ideas and concepts, but not just in the classroom. Many people have an important role in this idea of education, especially when it comes to technology. And that education also needs to be passed along to their friends and other people that they come into contact with. Many children, especially teenagers, tend to learn from each other. As one learns a skill, somebody says, "How did you learn that?" And they share that information again with their friends, and then they share it with others. So we need to help them get a good foundation of skills so that they can be ready to pass those along to others. And then finally, protect. And with all of the things that are going on with the hackings and the stealing of identities and all of those concepts, we need to make sure we're protecting our own identity. We need to protect our information and our ideas. And we also need to, as we protect our things, need to protect others as well. So when we think about updating and making sure that we have virus protection on our machines, it isn't just for our information, which it is, but it also is so that we're not passing that along to other people, and so that we're not damaging what they have as well. So to help organize all of this, the elements are then placed under each of these three main topic areas of respect, educate, and protect. Respect holds the ideas of etiquette, access, and law. Educate has communication, literacy, and commerce. And protect has rights and responsibilities, safety and security, health and wellness. So let's look into each one of these elements and dive a little bit deeper into each of these. Digital etiquette we defined as the standards of conduct expected by other digital technology users. We also expect those of ourselves and how we interact with others within a society, and how we post, how we talk to people, how we interact with others is all pieces of respect. We also can do this in the physical space. If we watch people when we go to restaurants, we go to other places, we often see tables full of people sitting on devices and interacting with others outside, but not always interacting with those that we hold in that physical space. And that shows an importance of who that person is. So we need to balance the technology of when we're in person and also when we're away as well. Digital access is full electronic participation. When we first worked on the elements, access really had two different pieces to it, and we actually had a 10th element that was focused more on the digital divide, which has now been pulled into access. And we do still have issues of digital divide. We don't talk as much about it, but now there is more of these haves and have-nots that are out there. And as we roll out processes like BYOD or BYOT, bring your own technology to schools, we have to be cognizant that there are those that do not have access to the technologies as much as others. The other part of this is access for those that may have mental or physical handicaps. Technology provides so many opportunities for those that may not have had the same opportunities in the pre-digital world. Those students that are especially in special education courses now have an outlet to interact with hand manipulation, with voice manipulation, that they can actually do more within their classes that they could never do in years prior. Digital law talks about legal rights and restrictions. In the days early on in the internet, many of these digital law pieces were handled by organizations, by their own groups and people that participated in them. But now today it's beginning to spread outside of that. And now we're actually seeing laws that are being written on a much greater scale than ever before. Topics such as cyberbullying has definitely gained the attention of state legislatures, and laws are now being written to protect and to help against these issues from happening. Where we go with this, we need to keep an eye on how our legislatures, how all of these organizations are writing laws so that we also protect ourselves, so that we can continue to use the technology as freely as possible. Digital communication is a huge growth area. With social media on the rise, there are so many different ways that we can interact with each other. There are now many possibilities of not just textual information, but pictures, videos, all different ways to communicate with each other. But we also need to be cognizant of when is it appropriate to use certain technologies and what do we share. Sometimes we don't need to share everything with everybody, but we tend to forget that many of these opportunities are open to the world, and that we need to keep in mind what is information that is shareable and what do we need to keep private. Digital literacy is the capability to use digital technology and knowing when and how to use it. Back in the early days, Mark Prensky talked about this idea of a digital native and a digital immigrant. And the natives were those that just seemed to instinctively know about technology. And we still talk about often young children today and those that are in school as being natives because they have been brought up in this and they have known nothing else but technology within their homes and within their schools. The issue is that are they literate about the tools that they have, or are they just not afraid to use those tools and technologies? So we must all be literate, and we must help not just ourselves, because as adults we need to continue to learn, but also continue to help our students. We don't assume that all children know how and when to use technologies. We need to help them. We need to give them direction. Digital commerce has grown exponentially within our community as use of technology. Just in this last Cyber Monday that happened after Thanksgiving, we saw over $2 billion being spent on a single day through digital commerce. The question is, did all of those people really understand how and where their information was going when they were putting it in, as far as their credit cards, their personal information, all of that? We need to make sure we protect all of those identities so that we can be secure, so that we can have these as opportunities to move us and provide us with the things that we want and at a time that we want. Digital rights and responsibilities. We know that we have been given so much. The internet provides us with so many opportunities, so much information. If we think back, especially into even my own childhood, the amount of information that is just available at my fingertips is so much larger than what I had. Much of the information was available, but you had to look for it. You had to go and find it. Now you put it into a search engine and here this information comes out. So we have the rights, but what are our responsibilities? What do we have to do as members of a digital society to be worthy of all of these rights? We must help other people. If they are having issues, if they are sending out signals to say that they're having problems, we need to help them. We can't just say, oh, that'll be somebody else will take care of that. We have to be in. Digital security and self-protection. I mentioned a little bit about things like passwords and virus protection. All of these things we have to do to help protect us, but it isn't always enough. There are always people that are trying to steal our information and trying to get that information so that it can be used against us or for other people. So we have to be aware. We have to keep in mind of where do we place this information. And when we talk about these elements, one thing that we must keep in mind is there is very much interaction between the elements, that there is a puzzle piece that each one of them interacts with each other and they overlap with other ideas. So when we're talking about protection, we're also talking about commerce, we're talking about communication, we're dealing with lots and lots of different ideas. So all of these interlock together. And finally, digital health and welfare. We originally focused on the physical aspects, things like carpal tunnel. That was a symptom of people using the technology and causing arthritic and other issues that had to be dealt with. But now that's changed somewhat. The tools have changed, not 100%, but they have changed so that they are more interactive and more ability so that we can more easily interact. But there's also a psychological aspect to it as well. When we talk about people and their connection to their technology, sometimes it is so much drawn to them that it's hard to separate those individuals from the technology. There have been some studies that have been done that when they separated technology, heavy technology users from their technology, they were then having withdrawal symptoms very much like an alcoholic does when they are separated from alcohol. So it does become a psychological, but it also can affect us physically as well. So we need to balance these things. Technology gives and provides us so many opportunities and help, but we need to know where is our balance. So what I did was begin to organize these into a fashion so that we can start helping our students to understand these. And what I did was I created a rep for each grade grouping. So if we look at grades K through 2, we start to talk about respect, educate, and protect in these different ideas of etiquette, communication, rights, and responsibilities. And we talk about these already in our classrooms. We already talk about etiquette in our classrooms of how do we play well with others. Why can't we tie in the digital piece of also interacting correctly using digital technologies? Because these kids are growing up with these opportunities and aspects in their lives, so they need to start learning about them even at an early age. And then as they build, we don't lose those. So just as I mentioned about repetitions, we don't lose etiquette, communication, rights, and responsibilities when we go into grades 3 through 5. We now build upon them. We now talk about access. We talk about literacy. We talk about safety and security. And then finally, some of the more involved ideas of law, commerce, and health and wellness are talked about in grades 6 through 8, so that when these students go into secondary schools, they will have been exposed to these ideas and they will at least be able to communicate and talk about them on a certain level. Will it completely get rid of all the issues that we have? No, it won't, because there will always be those that will stand outside of what is considered the norm. And then we need to help to draw them back in to better educate them into what it is to be a digital citizen and be able to interact with each other. Often we look at digital citizenship very much like a driver's education program. There are two aspects to it. You have to know the rules of the road, both in driver's education and in digital world as well. You have to know where it is appropriate to do and use technologies. When do where do I go to get information? That I know the rules of the road. I know the aspects of appropriateness and responsibility with technology. We have to have these. And as I learned early on in the driver's education piece, that we can't just say, well, I didn't know about a certain rule. That ignorance of these laws, of these concepts, are not an excuse to pass on being a appropriate digital citizen. And then the second part is we need to give them opportunities. We need to give them ability to learn and how do they use these technologies. We can't just do it in a static setting where they are talked about and then passed on. We have to give them opportunities to show that they understand and they've learned these skills. So how do we? There are many organizations that are out there that have started on this. One of the best that I've seen is the University of Kentucky. And if you go to this site at coeuky.edu, if you go to their site, go to their DDL site, it's their digital driver's license. And they are going to talk about these 9 elements that we just went through. And they have little descriptions and case studies that they have put together on these different ideas. And then they have created quizzes and little ways for your students to show you how they have learned. And from this, then I think we can provide our students with more opportunities if they are showing that they understand where it is, what it is to be a digital citizen. Another big piece is that we talk about our digital footprint. Where have we been? Where are we going to? And parents today are building a footprint for their children almost as soon as they're born, or even before they're born in some cases. Parents are creating Facebook pages and Twitter accounts and Instagram groupings to show pictures and information and ideas about their children even before they're born. So how is that going to affect these kids later on and how they see themselves as their own personal brand? Because our presence, our information is our brand. It is who we are and how we show ourselves to the world. A topic that is going along with this idea of digital footprint is a digital tattoo. And it, to me, is a little more specific about this idea of how we are building this idea of ourselves. It's not something that's happenstance. We are doing these things very purposely. Very much like getting a tattoo, we are choosing what are the symbols and the things that we want to place out there. And they are much more permanent than just a footprint in a sand. They don't just disappear. They're out there, and where we've been and what we've done are staying with us. So how do we help focus our students to say, you need to realize that what you do today can affect you in the future? One thing that we should all be doing is looking at our footprint or tattoo and what it looks like. And some of the simple ways to do this is just going out to a search engine and searching ourselves and seeing what information comes up. It doesn't have anything to do with just trying to be trying to build up your own personal ego. It is about knowing what other people are saying and what is being said about you. So you need to go out there and make sure that you know what's being said, what's being shown, what's being laid out as part of your persona. Your students need to do this as well. And as they grow, they need to focus their tattoo, their footprint into what they want to be and how they want it to look like when they graduate from high school, when they go into college, when they go for their first job. All of these things are terribly important. There are other sites, things like people.com or pq.com or other places that I think you'll be surprised how easily the information from your past is out there and available to other people. So you need to take a look at this information and how it will affect your. Before we put anything out there, I've come up with this 4-step concept called STEP. And following this step, I think will help focus your footprint, focus what you're doing out on the information superhighway, internet, social media, whatever you want to call it. And the first part of STEP is stop. And I know it sounds simple, but I think too often we just react to postings, to information, to whatever comes to our mind. We need to just take a breath, stop, and really collect our ideas and our thoughts before we move forward. And then really we need to stop and think. Think about what that information is. And the best I've ever seen is think as an acronym saying, is what is being said true? Is it helpful? Does it inspire confidence? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I think if students and even adults would stop and then think that concepts of cyberbullying and issues of how people interact and the issues that come about would decrease if they would just think, if they would say, is this really necessary? Is it kind? Is it helpful? And we need to keep that in mind as we are looking to post. The next is empathy. We don't talk a lot about empathy, and we used to focus more on it in schools. And I know that there are so many other pieces that are out there, but empathy for others and how they feel and what they are doing is critical in this piece of keeping ourselves being positive digital citizens. Because if we aren't able to think about how what we are going to do affects others, how it might cause them to have harm, those are the issues that Matt Ivester talks about in his book. We need to stop, think, and then really look at the other person and say, is this something that's going to cause them harm? And it is harder, and we're starting to see this slow decline of empathy. We've had studies that have gone on for many decades, and we're seeing that empathy is becoming less and less a focal point for not just for students, but for adults. And then finally, if it's something that meets these criteria, then post it. So go through this step, stop, think, empathize, and then finally post if that meets all the. Another group that has done some great things and has some great information is Common Sense Media. If you haven't been out to their site, please go out to commonsensemedia.org. You will find materials already out there. They have a little bit different layout as far as their standards, but some really, really great information at every grade level. And if you're working towards alignment to standards, if you look under related resources on the right-hand side, you'll see under the fourth piece down that they have aligned a lot of their information to the. So how do we begin creating this plan for digital? One is I'm hoping that through this course you're learning about these topics and beginning to build an idea of where you want to be and where your school should be related to technology and appropriate use. One thing that you can do is get together a group of teachers and administrators and staff and begin to look at your acceptable use policy. Too often it is, you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this. We need to kind of flip that on its side and begin to look at how can we look at it from a responsible standpoint. Here are some examples of different parts of acceptable use policies for updating them. Things like consider others when using digital technology. Be able to be a responsibly participant of a digital society. Abide by laws and rules. Protect the rights of others. Be custodians of your own information. So when we look at these kinds of statements, it isn't just the negative aspects. It isn't just you can't do this and you can't do that. It is more about what should we be doing? Where can we go with these ideas and concepts? Another place is this policy development guide that was put together by the province of Alberta. If you go to the site, you will find that they have put together a guide that really walks through the different parts of how do I create a digital citizenship program. And they have used the elements that I mentioned above, and they've brought in some of their own ideas of where they see technology moving. And each school, district, country is going to see things just a little bit differently. But this does give you sort of a focus, an idea of where they started and where they were heading with when they talked about digital. So in sort of conclusion, we need to be thinking about these ideas of learning and teaching about technologies, not just for toys that we use within a classroom, but real tools to move us as a digital organization and move us into the future. I love this statement from Abraham Lincoln that he said, we must teach the children so that it won't be necessary to teach the adults. And I'm afraid that if we don't begin this process, we will go through another organization, another time frame of adults not understanding the true idea of what it is to be a digital citizen. So we must begin today. And then finally from Confucius, if we're just thinking in terms of a year, we just plant a seed. And sometimes we have to do that. We plant a single seed and hope that it grows. But if we're thinking more long term, in 10 years, we need to plant a tree. But if we're thinking very long term, we need to think in the idea of teaching the people. And I think that's so important in digital ideas as well. Not just how we're going to be today, but what we're going to see in the future. And this is the concept of my elements of digital citizenship and the bigger idea of digital citizenship within schools, but within communities as well, that we're trying to create a citizenry of appropriate, responsible technology users. I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to do a presentation to give you today. And if you wish to communicate with me directly, please go to my website at www.digitalcitizenship.net, and you can click on the Contact Us and you can send me an email directly, or you can go onto Twitter and type in the @DigCitizen and you can get in contact with me that way. I wish you well with the rest of your course, and please don't hesitate to interact with myself, and I'm sure that any of the people that are working on this course would be happy to help you as you're moving forward. Good luck, and please think about not just today, but think about technology into the future. Thank you.